Okay, so looking at chapter 1, there's 6. We have a few more notches. I've done the contours and regions. That would be my immediate choice, but let's take a look at what happens with some of the trim items. So I probably haven't trimmed regularly in well, quite a few years now, since the contours and regions really kind of clicked for me. I just keep going. So I'm going to stay with the sketch numeric input. And then in this case, when we hit tab and I put in the 140 because it's not an equal, then it will go ahead and enter those that value. So I can jump into the line, hitting L on the keyboard, and we'll drag out 20, and was a little bit of a flip there. All right, so what ends up happening with the trim, and we have trim entities. Power trim is where we drag. So I'll do power trim, but my prefer is to trim to closest. All right, so I trimmed it out. It pretty much got rid of, because that object was the attachment point for the dimension. Then it gets rid of that. So if I go back and pick the two lines, the two objects, the 110 is still there. It didn't go anywhere, but it did keep it out of the mix. So habit with the S key, we'll go ahead and hit that and put in the 60. Let's take a look at the jog one more time. See if I can get back to my jog line and place it, and then hit OK. So just a right mouse button to get into the context menu, or the arrows change in the upper corner, or we can come back over to the property manager and be able to get into those. So this is a 40, and then from the edge in is a 50. And we could do the math and change this around a little bit, but that has an inherent potential for error in there. All right, so the jog trimmed that out for me. Let's go with L on the keyboard. I want to watch out for those midpoints. If I drag up and all of a sudden I'm seeing that midpoint icon and the little yellow box, I want to be careful about grabbing that. All right, and then the dimensions that it's showing me are not convenient on the input on the baseline dimensioning. So we'll go to the 120 and then to the 50. All right, and then because on this side the object is already dimensioned over here, when I go into the trim, and I'll just trim this to closest, and trim to closest is my preference. I just want it to trim, unless there's just a lot of trimming to do. The other issue becomes if there's that much to trim, then I really want to look at going back to the contours and regions. All right, so off of the base we have 20. We're going to do 25 off of the vertical edge, and we have a diameter of 20. All right, so I'm set up for my geometry to do a linear sketch pattern. And I could draw three of these, but there's something to be said for going through this process of the linear pattern. I have 3. The distance instant count, fix the x-axis direction, and in this case I've given it enough information that it's able to complete the solve for the sketch. I'll go ahead and extrude. Let's see, thickness is 15. And we'll go ahead and save that. All right, let's see what we've got for 1-7. A little more on the geometry side again. So let's go back to contours and regions. We are in millimeter, thickness is 5. I don't see anything really strange on the dimensions, so let's close that one out. New metric. I'm going to go front plane, sketch, S key, and this one I'm going to show you kind of the speed of the sketch numeric input. Now this 100 is going to generate a little bit of an issue. So that'll be a good error to preview, is when we go that way. If I was to trim this, let's see, it's come back a little bit and my dimensions are going kind of the other way. All right, so if we go in and trim this, and it's going to tell me that the sketch segment has a midpoint or equal length, equal distance. Do you want to continue? No, I can leave it and do the contour and region, but because this was set to equal, it break that equal relation, and I don't really have to have it. So in that case, I have my geometry. We're going to go to 40. Notice that I'm putting in, or I'm trying to infer a lot of the relations first, and then we're going back with the dimensions. There's no real you have to do it this way. It's what makes sense to you, but there is kind of a natural pace and direction that you'll fall into with selecting these. So with our smart dimension on a lot of these, I've been picking the line and the point, or the object and the point. Keep in mind that I can create the dimension by selecting the object, and then because of the direction of the smart dimension, it will figure out which way it needs to go. All right, and this one, well, I can't do too much with it. I'm going to go between object to object. Let's see, is it F? F on the keyboard does the fit to screen, and I missed that one, so let's see, let's draw the other one. These are 20, and we'll draw that one. And select, hold down the control button, select, and select, set to equal. All right, so these two, I'm going to click out just to clear the selections. It picked the region around the box, which is fine. So there's going to be some times where we're going to want to turn that shaded sketch contours off if making the selection gets a little weird, if it interferes with anything. So we set those to vertical. Back into our dimension. I like the perimeter of the circle because it's the biggest, a big target to select to. A little bit, well, there's times where the if the drawing's crowded or the sketch is crowded, that picking that center point is a little more challenging. All right, so 30 and then 75. All right, so we're back into the contours and regions. It is a thickness of 5, and there is the area that I want. Control save, 1-7, and save. We'll kick that out. All right, so this is the one that I had that that error in selecting, or I did a relation to start with, and then when I did the pattern, something got tangled up between those two relations. So I'm going to try to avoid doing that again. I do like the, let's see, this is in millimeters, so we'll go back into metric. Let's see what happens if we, if I remember correctly, I did this, oh, missed that one, so we're by 100 anyway. I did it as a center and then made it symmetric. I'm going to go ahead with the region. And if we go line, we'll draw that in. And then I can stay in the object line and go from midpoint to midpoint. and over in the property manager change it to for construction. Or if I've escaped out, I can right click on that object, and on the second row of our icons here, I can toggle between construction geometry and object geometry. So what I'm looking for is a select, control select the center line, mirror the entities, and then let's take a look at our geometry. So we have 20, and we have 40 from the top. So I can't pick that because it's the entire length. I need to go between the two lines. I would like this to remain symmetric, so select the object, hold down the control button, and keep holding the control button, and we'll get the other object. And then in our icons, we can make symmetric, or I can always come over to the property manager and make symmetric. All right, our dimensions then will be 20 for the height, 70 off of the edge. And then let's see what I can do with the circles this time. So even though it's kind of trying to infer, since I haven't applied anything and it didn't infer relation, we're going to go with this one and figure it out here in a second. All right, so linear sketch pattern. We want 2 in X, and the spacing then is 40. And our direction 2 has to have at least 2 to make the pattern, and then this will also be 40. Okay, and once we get to that spacing, dimension the Y spacing. There's no angle. We do want to instance count. All right, so let's see what that gives us. Now, if this is able to move, we'll go ahead and put in our dimensions. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. Okay, so I already have that one. Kind of assume that it would be off of that point, but I can add in a separate dimension for the pattern just in case. And 20 was what I was looking for there. So I'm going to end up with those dimensions. Now anything in blue, if I kind of move that, it gives me some hint, a little bit of a clue of what I need to add. And this time it works out okay. So in the creation of the linear sketch pattern, I could remove this instance and it just wouldn't show up. But on the off chance that I want to change something later on, it's a lot easier to just change that to an object, change those to construction, and go on with whatever modification, whatever revision is taking place. So, and it's saying underdefined over there. So we'll have to see if it still says underdefined on the sketch. So if I expand the little arrow, my sketch looks good. Let's go ahead and save it. So that one didn't generate an error. I'm pretty happy about that. All right, let's go to 9. All right, the arc. I do like this one for the 3-point arc. We have pretty straightforward on the geometry, so let's go ahead. This one's going to be in metric. We'll go new, part metric, front plane, sketch, line. We're going to draw the 2 lines to begin with, and this one is 60. Oh, I didn't hit enter. So that one should still be in there, and that one is 100, enter. I don't do the sketch numeric input as much. I started doing it, and then with the issue in Service Pack 1, I kind of stopped again. All right, so in our arcs, we have the option for a center point arc, a tangent arc. Tangent arc has to have an endpoint to work from. The 3-point arc, however, has the dashed line, so I can go from endpoint to endpoint. Just select the endpoint. I'm doing the click drag again, select the other endpoint, And as I drag this out, I just get it close, and it's asking me for the numeric input, so 58.31. Try that again, 31. And that gives me my shape. Now, I would like to know where that center point ended up. So if I put that geometry in, it's going to ask me if I want to make it driven, because the two endpoints and the radius are what is defining that arc. So all I can really do with the X and Y location of the center, and one I can pick the perimeter, and I think I just picked the center point. So for whichever one you're more comfortable with, but as a general rule, I'm going to go to the perimeter. So jumping into my S key, and these are going to be 20, and then I'm going to set to equal, and we need a few more dimensions for those, so 30 and 60. And then the height of 45, and the height, oh no, between the two is 15. All right, and then our thickness is 20. And we'll save that. So we're halfway through Chapter 1. Again, these are optional projects. Introduce these other strategies, other techniques. For the assignments, I'm going to stay with a very straightforward selection tools and process. Try to stay real consistent. But on these optional models, I want to have these additional techniques available to you.